Hello watch lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Stian and today we have a little bit of a troubled watch on the bench. We see the watch is in a very nice visual condition. It's from a brand that I never heard of and that does not exist anymore. Aerni from Le Locle in Switzerland in the Jura Mountains. Le Locle is certainly famous for watch brands. You have Zenith, Ulysse Nardin, Mido, Tissot, Montblanc and so forth. I'm actually going to Le Locle in a couple of weeks for some training, so looking forward to that. We saw the watch does not run and these chronograph buttons do nothing. The balance does not oscillate really. It doesn't seem that the balance staff is broken, but there is something strange with the balance going on. So let's get the movement out of the case and then we can start inspecting it. So I briefly mentioned those two buttons. So one of them stops the second hand and the other resets the second hand to 0. So it's a very simple chronograph, sometimes called the poor man's chronostop. I'm putting the crown back in so we can align the hands to the second hand. Then it's easier to take them all off together. I'm using a simple piece of plastic to protect the dial while we do that. And then we can unscrew the dial screws and put the hands and the dial into a box for safekeeping. The movement is the ETA 1168. Which was used by quite a few small brands back in the day. And the watch has been overwound and it's not possible to let the mainspring down with a click. So we're going to have to find a way around that. And there's not a lot of good options, but we'll figure something out. We see that the balance is actually stuck in the balance cock. So we finally do get it out, but that's a bit odd. So we're going to have to see what's wrong with the balance. So we can see with the balance out that the train actually does want to run. So what I'm doing is carefully holding the train, the center wheel with a tweezer. And then letting it down, let's say step by step. Not the ideal way to do it, but it does work when you're careful. So the top button stops the second hand momentarily while the button is depressed. And it does so with this big spring here, which simply touches and then arrests the center seconds wheel. This lever here is the reset to 0, or reset to wherever the second hand was put on basically. And that's the function. I'll talk a bit more about that when we assemble the watch again. So the movement otherwise is pretty straightforward. So while I'm disassembling it, I'm gonna muse a little bit about life in general. It's summer of course, and it's actually been very hot in Switzerland where I live, close to Lake Geneva. It is commonly a few weeks above 30. So that's quite warm for a Norwegian. My son plays football and last week he had this tournament. And it was so hot, man. Like 35 degrees and these little kids were running around all day. And then at the end of the day they had this sort of awards ceremony. And one thing all the kids were getting was a bottle of iced tea. Now imagine it's like super hot and you're getting an iced tea. Iced tea. But of course the iced tea was piss warm. Didn't stop the kids from drinking it, but yeah, a little bit of a letdown. Speaking of letdown, we got the mainspring out and we see that it is a very old type. So it's been a while since this watch has been serviced. Not a lot of parts in this watch, so should be all right. Let's get all the parts into the basket and then into the cleaning machine. And then we're going to take a look at the case afterwards. So the case is in very nice condition, and the owner of the watch, Tom, he does not want me to polish the case, and I fully agree in that. We do have to take out the pushers so that we can clean everything properly. We're also going to take out the crystal. And with that we can put everything into the ultrasonic. I opened a channel up to memberships a couple of weeks back. A warm thanks to everyone who signed up so far. If you want to go a bit deeper than these videos and join a thriving community already, then you can click join underneath this video or on the channel, or you can go to Patreon at this URL. So let's start looking at the problems with the watch. We first need to take the hairspring off the balance staff. We do that very carefully. And then we can have a look at the balance staff under the microscope. And it should not look like this. I think this is probably compression damage, but it's a bit odd. So what we're going to do, we're going to burnish the pivot. We're using this burnisher for that. We have to dress it a little bit before we can use it. As you might have seen, it does have some use marks from before. So we dress it with a stone and then sandpaper afterwards. The burnisher has two sides, so a good idea is to have one a little bit rougher and one a little bit finer side. Then we can first take the unevenness out and then sort of polish it with a fine side afterwards. So I'm just measuring the pivot. We're going to use something called the Jacko tool. And part of the Jacko tool kit is also a pivot measuring device. And that's all to make sure that we use the correct slot in this drum. And then we use the burnisher to sort of stretch out that unevenness. And then I flip the burnisher to polish it. And after doing that, we see that the pivot looks much better. Actually much shinier than the other one, but yeah, we need to clean it, so it should be fine. Let's then put the hairspring back on. It's safest to use a staking set for that. What we want to try to remember is where the hairspring was positioned on the balance. Otherwise we might have a lot of beat error when we put the watch together again. So I was looking also a little bit into the shock setting for the pivot that was damaged. And there's some sort of weird debris inside the chaton. So remember that this is a very, very, very small piece. This is under the microscope. That hole there is about 0.1 millimeter wide. But we finally get that debris out and clean the chaton. And then we're going to put it into the Epilam solution to make sure that the lubrication stays a bit better in place. So this heat sure is driving people crazy. And speaking of crazy, my wife, maybe she doesn't need the heat to be crazy, but I really did a horrible thing the other day. And that really attracted my wife's eternal wrath. We have this dispenser built into the kitchen top for dishwashing soap, and I managed to put hand soap in there. So between a fit of rage and an Amazon order for a different dispenser for hand soap, I didn't manage to get a word in, and I told my wife that the only time you're patient is when you're seeing a doctor. I was very proud of that pun, but yeah, I hope she's not watching this video. So with the shock settings ready, we can put the balance on and then put the shock settings in. And when I screw down this balance cock, I wiggle the movement a little bit, just to make sure that the pivots are in the holes. Because as mentioned, these pivots are typically around 0.1 millimeter. So that's very easy to break. All right, let's see. What I'm checking here is the end shake, and I find that there's not quite enough end shake on this balance. So I'm going to take the balance off the cock again and just give it a little bit more end shake. By the way, if the screw for the stud comes all the way loose, then the easiest way to get it back in is using a pin vise like this. All right. We're going to put just a tiny little bit more of end shake on the balance cock, and then we can try the balance again. Tiny little wobble, but that's just fine. All right, let's get the rest of the movement back together. I am putting in a new mainspring, but somehow I still oiled or lubricated the bottom of the barrel. It's not really necessary with a new mainspring. For those of you who do not know that much about mechanical watches, the mainspring is the only source of power in the watch. So it is coiled up inside the barrel around this barrel arbor, which we have there. And the barrel arbor is then connected to the crown via a few wheels, so that when you turn the crown, you actually coil that mainspring up. And of course, the energy in the coiled up mainspring is what then will drive all the different wheels in the watch. And there's quite some math, of course, around this whole thing. The number of teeth in the different wheels, the number of teeth in different pinions. Of course, all that adds up. So that, for instance, this center wheel there rotates once per hour. And then if you put a hand on that wheel on the other dial, then you can show the minutes. So it's all about ratios. And the mainspring, given that it's the only power source, it also means that we have to help the power reach all the way to the end of the train, where the balance is. And the way we do that is by making sure we lubricate everywhere there's a friction point. And these red rubies also really help reduce the friction. So the way this very simple chronograph works is that this wheel here is actually the one that's being driven by the train. And it has a friction clutch with this seconds wheel that holds the seconds hand and also has the reset hard-shaped cam. So once you press the stop or the reset, then the friction is overcome so that the seconds hand will be moving, or not moving actually, it stops. But you're not stopping the train. That's important, of course. So we're over on the dial side. We're putting together the keyless works, which has a lot of very strong friction points. So here we use a little bit thicker grease, and then we're going to use an oil on all the different posts. Very important that we lubricate well, but also not too much. Should be just enough. The Goldilocks principle, I suppose. In general, you don't want to see that you've lubricated. So in a second, you're going to see that I kind of mash a lot of blue grease on here. But then you also remove the excess afterwards with Rodico or something similar. Alright, a very simple dial side. There's not too much going on. There are a couple of end stones, cap jewels, that we need to lubricate on this side. There's of course no things like an hour counter or a date, calendar, disc and so forth. So perhaps one question to you viewers. Let me know in the comment section if you prefer videos that feature a lot of complications, or if you also enjoy these a little bit simpler watches. I'm very interested to hear what you think. Those who are regulars on the channel surely know that I like chronographs, but also all kinds of other complicated watches. And you, yeah, you, exactly you. If you like this stuff, please do subscribe. It will help me make more videos for you. Actually just passed 50,000 subscribers. So please subscribe and help me get to 100. That would be very cool. Then I would finally get some respect from my kids. It's like having had a business career, yeah, whatever. Being a watchmaker, yeah, whatever. Being a YouTuber, wow! Wow! Papa is a YouTuber! Yeah. The reason I started this channel was actually for something that I haven't yet shown the world. But I'm getting very close to showing it. So I'm pretty confident that this calendar year, that's in the remaining a little bit less than 6 months, I will be able to show everyone why I actually started this channel in the first place. So stay tuned and do make sure you subscribe so you don't miss big news that's coming. Alright, we lubricated the pallet fork, and then we can put the balance in and see how this watch runs. Perhaps first if it runs. Oh, it's nice to see that balance start up. And it is a nice little movement. I think the coolest thing about working on vintage watches is that you see so many different kinds of movements. So let's demagnetize the movement and see what the verdict is on the time grapher. Well, it does run and the lines look pretty straight, but obviously the beat error is a little bit too much. This is an old movement where you have to adjust the beater by moving the collet for the hairspring on the balance staff. So we're going to first look a little bit closely at the pallet fork to see which way it's tilting to. And we see it's leaning towards the right banking pin there. So that tells us which direction we have to move the collet to. And after a couple of tries, we do manage to get the beater down to 1.0 milliseconds. And that's acceptable for an old watch like this. So let's get the last few parts into the watch, and then we can case it and put the dial and hands on. Very important, of course, that we use our obsessive compulsive disorder for all the positive things we can. So we are going to test every single little thing we put in. So after putting in this reset lever, let's see if it works. And we can see it resets and holds the top wheel that the second sand is attached to, while the underlying wheel keeps moving. So that looks alright. Then we can put the hour wheel back on. But let's have a look at the dial. There was this one mark on the dial, and a lot of people will probably think that, oh, let's just clean the dial. But if we look under a microscope, we see that this is not dirt. It is some sort of discoloration of the dial. So there's not much we can do about that. We screw the dial back on. For a watch with no date, it doesn't matter where we put the hour hand, so we just put it somewhere and press it on. And then we make sure it doesn't touch the dial, and then we can put it to 12 o'clock. We can put it really at any full hour, but 12 is maybe easiest, and then we can press a minute hand on. Before casing the watch, we're going to put the case back together with the pushers, with these springs inside the pusher, and also then the screws that go into the pusher from the inside. Fairly common solution. We're also going to put on a new crystal, and the way we do that with a bezel like this is that we put the bezel under the crystal and then press the crystal down onto a domed stake. And then the crystal will flex a little bit, and we can press the bezel onto the crystal from the underside. Works like a charm. So you will see here that the second sand is on. That was a little bit short-sighted of me, because we of course need to make sure that when you press the reset button, that the second sand resets to 12 o'clock. And that's much easier to do when the movement is cased. So I took the second sand off and then put it back on again. And we see that the functions work. Alright, before seeing the watch on the wrist, just want to remind everyone that at vintagewatchservices.eu you will always find more than 100 beautiful vintage watches. And as a YouTube subscriber, you can get 10% off by using this coupon code. And there we have it. The Aerni from Le Locle. Simple chronostop watch with a really nice dial and a very nice case as well. And now it's running again. And the buttons work as they should. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then do subscribe, do click like, and check out the membership options. We'll be back with another video shortly. Until then, ta-ta.